Folks, we're going to start a little early. We're seeing a great presentation here from Eric Vandiver.
All right, ready to go? I'm going to start my timer so I don't run over. Anyone recognize this by chance? I found it. No? Edward Hopper, yeah. Love his stuff. Apparently he painted in Connecticut, and it was titled New York, New Haven, and Hartford. It's painted in 1931. All right, so I'm Eric Vandiver. I live down in Norwood, Massachusetts, or up in Norwood, Massachusetts, I guess. I've been a member of the NHRHTA for about a little less than 10 years. So I'm a novice at this. Be gentle on me, all you old timers. This will be my first presentation I've done on the railroad, or railroad-related topic, so please be gentle as well. I'm talking on Elias E. Pratt, and we'll do a little deep dive on each of his patents. The genesis for... Oh, sorry, before I get there, some quick acknowledgments. Richard Fleischer, ton of help, sent me some awesome photos, not all of which I'll end up including, but he got me in touch with Joe Taylor. Joe Taylor allowed me to use some of his material. Earl Tucson, you've seen Earl's name referenced in a Shoreliner article a few months ago, about gondolas. Ken Ackerboom, who's actually with the Boston and Maine Historical Society, and some data he got from Eric Niebauer concerning gondolas. Not directly related to the New Haven, but we believe some of the New Haven Pratt cars eventually ended up at the B&M and rebuilt into other cars. So Randy Hamill did some research and sent me some data. Mike Rebuffo gave me some great photographs that I've used, and I appreciate that. Charlie Dunn, Peter Ness, Laura Smith down at University of Connecticut, always very helpful. I'll say this from the outset, I have yet to get down to Yukon, so I have a lot of research left to do on a lot of aspects of this. Dave Peters, his collection's fantastic, and what I've seen online so far is I think there's more material there to be had. I struck up a quick friendship with Bob Belitsky, and I'm sorry he's gone. His website, Tyler City Station, I think is a gold standard for research of the railroad, and hopefully I do him a little bit of justice with what I present to here. And then Chris Adams, my inspiration for modeling. That's good stuff right there. Okay, here we go. The genesis for this project came, I was looking for wood, was it 83 or 8600 baggage cars on Yukon site, and I, novice Googler there on the website, and I type in, wood cars, whatever, something, and this pops up. I'm like, that's interesting. I don't know what that is. I've never seen that before. After looking at it for a second, obviously we don't paint cars like that with all the patents and the types of couplers and, blah, blah, blah. We don't do that as a matter of routine. So this was a publicity and promo photo, and I kind of looked at it, and I didn't know what the guy was doing at the bar there. I just moving on. But at some point in the future, though, I come across the car again. I'm like, what is that? So there's the genesis. My original interest was maybe that might be something interesting to scratch build. And it evolved into what I'm going to present today, which is more a biographical view of Elias E. Pratt, because I got so interested in the car as I dove down into everything else, it just got more and more interesting to me. So I'm going to move fast because I realize this could be dry material, so try to keep up. Okay, Elias W. Pratt, his father, well, his mother died when he was young and he went to live with an uncle. His father apprenticed to a Hanover, Mass. Shipbuilder at age 17 and married Ruth Briggs at 21. His father purchased one of his new in-laws' homesteads there in South Scituate and struck out his own as a ship's carpenter. Elias Edward Pratt was born at South Scituate, Mass., which is now Norwell, on April 29th of 1829. And then his own mother passed in 1834 when he was just 5. Details of his first 30 or so years are sketchy. I can tell from the evidence and the material at hand that he apprenticed in his father's trade to a certain extent. The 1850 census notes his occupation as a housewright rather than ship's carpenter, so something to consider. He was 21 years old, single, and living in his father's household. A year later, in May, Pratt married Melinda A. At Marshfield, Massachusetts. They eventually had 5 kids, 4 before the Civil War and 1 after. And per the 1860 census, Pratt was still living in South Scituate, Mass., and his occupation was now master carpenter. And there's one report of him doing some contract work down in Easton, Massachusetts. I only put this photo in the upper right corner up there. South Scituate was known for its shipbuilding, and a lot of them were in the 30, 40, 50 maybe foot type schooner range. That's not a particularly deep harbor, and so he has experience both on the shipbuilding side, and then you get into the house right. So that becomes important later, because in September of 1862, Pratt, now age 33, enlists with Company F of the 43rd Regiment, Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry. It's for a period of 9 months. The 43rd Regiment formed at Reedville, Massachusetts. Pratt's wartime service was almost exclusively in the New Bern, North Carolina area. He participated in several battles, one of which was to tear up railroad tracks across a bridge. He promoted to corporal, but his primary duty during that 9-month enlistment was on detail as a draftsman to a different Massachusetts regiment. I thought that's interesting. As a non-experienced volunteer soldier who's simply an infantryman, all of a sudden gets detailed over to a different regiment as a draftsman. Doubtful the Army trained him how to be a draftsman. He either learned it, apprenticing for his father, or it was kind of self-taught through the work. I don't have details, and so I don't know how it came to be, but there it is. However that came to be, like I said, the skill and ability there are evident, since he was selected to do something other than just manual labor that you would expect of a soldier. Note there in the photo on the left, that's Camp Meigs, is the little dots there with a camp, but you've got the red lines, 2 curling off to the left and 1 shooting straight south. That's, all those tracks are still there. Some are in use, some are long abandoned, but the Dedham Loop is one of the ones off to the left. While he was at Camp Meigs, though, he would be watching multiple railroads come and go. It was a busy railroad junction, so that was his first look at railroad operations. And that's actually a photo of Elias Pratt later in life. I think that was when he was about 80 or 78, something like that. All right. So about a year after he's discharged from the Army, he mustered out in July of 1863 at 34. So about a year later, sometime in 1864, he was engaged by the car department of the newly formed Boston, Hartford, and Erie Railroad. Now, they had car shops at Reedville, although I've not yet uncovered exactly where those car shops are. I've looked on maps that I can find, and I just haven't been able to figure it out yet. But we know they're there. We don't know why he chose there to search for a job. It seems more than just coincidence to me that the regiment forms at Reedville. He goes away to 9 months, comes back, and that's where he ends up finding a job, having grown up in out toward the Cape to the southeast. His wife's family was from down that way, so there was no connection up here other than the Reedville stay at Camp Meigs. During this time, the BH&E was also undergoing its own, I guess you call it, consolidation effort. They were snapping up deeds and other railroads in the area, and there was a big push to put together an east-west line. And so that, that would have been the buzz of the town out there, and they were a growing railroad. A lot of, as railroads were in the time, there's a lot of shenanigans involving money and stock and real estate and whatnot. And the state of Massachusetts was involved in this one, and they dropped several $1 million with the BH&E to work on this east-west line. So they were speculative, to say the least, but that's where he ended up. His son Willie A. was born in 1866, but would pass just a couple years later. The 1870 census, so he's been at the railroad now about 6 years, lists Pratt as living in Hyde Park, Mass., and his occupation was simply a carpenter. He was added to the list of members of the Master Car Builders Association at the 4th Annual Convention in New York in June of 1870, and he attended the 5th Annual Convention of the Master Car Builders Association in Richmond, Virginia in 1871. By 1872, he was named a Master Car Builder of the BH&E. So in barely, just under 10 years, he'd gone from a carpenter hired on to Master Car Builder of the railroad. About 1870, he's now age 40. He meets another war veteran, this fella named Charles P. Clark. Charles P. Clark's Civil War exploits read like some sort of an action-adventure fiction novel. It's pretty interesting stuff. But be that as it may, he meets this young man who's also in his first railroading job post-Civil War. And Clark was a clerk of the trustees of the BH&E. He would later become a trustee of the BH&E, 1870 to 75, and then a vice president and general manager of the newly formed New York and New England, about 1875 to 1879. And we know that New York and New England eventually purchased or acquired the BH&E in about September of 1874. Clark would later become recognized as most efficient and productive presidents of the New Haven. He'd served 12 years, 8 months as the president, and that was the longest term by far, second only to Howard S. Palmer. Some reports of the period say that Clark and Pratt, for whatever reason, became fast friends. Interesting to me that happened, since Clark is a clerk and eventually a trustee, and he owns some real estate paper on the BH&E. He bought some of their land pieces, so he was holding some of that. But then he befriends the Master Car Builder. So I don't know what that connection is, how that came to be. But anyway, they became fast friends. And then just a few short years later, we know the BH&E shops at Reeville burned in about 1873. A group of businessmen and town leadership at the newly incorporated town of Norwood, Massachusetts, sensed an opportunity with that burning. The group championed the town's purchase of 17 acres of land, which is something about twice the area of the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool. And they gifted that to the recently incorporated New York and New England for a new shop complex, and that was completed by the fall of 1874. So, the map in the upper left there, I think it's from about 1883, 1882, but it didn't change a whole lot. At the time, you see the car shops kind of center left. Norwood Central is just across the tracks from the car shops. There's a Norwood Depot train station down to the right, maybe a little ahead of where that locomotive is. And and Winslow's is back up toward the upper left corner. There would be more train stations and a freight house added to Norwood later. A couple different photos you got there of the car shop. So those were pretty substantial facilities for 1874. And then on the lower right is the original Norwood Central train station. That station will be replaced in 1905 with a brick structure that's still there today. All right, and then we'll go to So on December 5th of 1876, Pratt, now 47, was granted his first patent. It was for a car door hanging device. I think it's interesting that his son, Elias E. Pratt Jr., who was 19 at the time, signed as a witness. That's kind of a cool thing for you to get to do with your dad. The car door hanging device, so the leftmost picture there is the full drawing provided with the patent itself, which is just a one-pager in the lower right. I blew up the bottom chunk of the door there, so you can see letter H. That's the roller. And the picture in the bottom where the letters are reversed, I oriented that so you're looking down at the door. This invention was the roller fixed to the bottom of the car below the door, and then the iron strap that curves out from the door as you get toward the rear of the door. So the rear of the door's iron strap is wedge-shaped. What happens is that door slides to the left to close. The thickening wedge-shaped iron strap is getting pressed by that roller that's fixed in place, and it shoves the bottom of the door tight against the bottom of the car. The other part of this invention is this little strap thing you see here, M and K. That's a simple iron strap on the leading edge of the door, and as the door comes to a close, piece M there just grabs the inside edge of the door and sucks it right in. The other part of this invention was what's called a runlet. Basically it's a cast iron roller track that's all enclosed, and because it was all enclosed, it was supposed to keep dirt, ice, snow, all that kind of stuff out of the rolling mechanism of the door at the top. Okay, about 1880, the census indicates Pratt, now age 51, was living in Norwood, Massachusetts. He'd moved down from Hyde Park. His occupation is listed as boss railroad shops. Elias E. Jr. is 23, and his son Eldon B. is 25. Both of those are single, and they're living with Pratt and Melinda in Norwood. Elias E. Jr.'s occupation was recorded as a bookkeeper with the railroad shops, and Eldon was a clerk in the railroad station. Pratt also had two boarders, a man and a wife, and that gentleman's occupation was listed as blacksmith. That gentleman would later be Pratt's pallbearer at his funeral some 35 years later. Pratt's son Eldon B. passed away at age 26 in 1881, and in October 11th of 1881, Pratt, now 52, was granted his second patent for a swinging bolster for car trucks. So the drawings on the left and then the single-page description again on your right. This design placed coiled springs on top of a keyed plate. The keyed plate's that figure 2 on the lower half of the photo on the left. Those in turn rode on top of ordinary elliptic springs. The keyed plate was placed between and within two halves of the bolster, and the plate was keyed so that it would ride up and down, guided by vertical flange ribs on the inside. It's a spring on top of a spring. The way he designed the keyed plate and the coiled spring inside the bolster there, it saved a little bit of height. I've got no story on how or why this came to be, or if it was ever used in construction. It was something. There it is. It's a patent, and I can't find any other information on it. So moving on, about 1882, while he was master car builder of the New York, New England shops, Pratt, 53, and his son Elias Jr., who was 25 at the time, purchased an oilcloth business of the late Norwood entrepreneur Fisher Talbert. Now, this business, if you look down the lower right, it was this collection of buildings here, just off the tracks. This building had already burned and been rebuilt twice, so I guess third time was a charm for these guys. Interesting to me that the master car builder of the New York and New England shops had the time or wherewithal to buy this business and employed 20 men manufacturing 108,000 yards of carpet annually. We know they owned the business at least through April 1888 when Pratt sued a former customer for non-payment. Pratt attended the Master Car Builders' 16th Annual Convention in Philadelphia in June of '82, and he was appointed to lead a formally designated Committee of the Master Car Builders Association for 1881-1882. The committee was named on improvements in cars during current year, and they report their findings for convention discussion at the 17th Annual Convention. I found a single written copy of that 17th Annual Convention report. It is physical only, not online, and it is at a library in the United Kingdom. So anybody that's headed east, let me know. I got a library for you to stop at. Pratt, age 54, was awarded the silver medal for best freight car door in class number 5, freight car appliances, at the Chicago Exposition of Railroad Appliances. That was held in Chicago in May of 1883. Interesting that his first patent, the car door hanging device there, was given an award 7 years later. I don't know, can't prove this, but I wonder if that wasn't just enough publicity or some sort of, design validation bump that he needed. The Old Colony Railroad ended up picking up that design, and they used it in a small number of boxcars. The South Boston shops produced 27 33-foot cars, that winter, and then they produced another handful, I think it was 25, quote, of the same make in the spring and summer of 1885. And then Pratt attended another annual convention of the Master Car Builders Association in Saratoga in 1884. It's a recurring theme, and it's documented that he attended these over and over again. The Master Car Builders Association only had, from what I can tell, a couple of hundred members at a time, and an even smaller number that actually attended the conventions. But remember, the Master Car Builders Dictionary was being drafted starting back with maybe the third or fourth meeting. What was happening in the railroad industry at the time was they were trying to settle on standards across all the railroads. So he was, not only was he a member of the association that wasn't that big, he was a master car builder attending these meetings regularly and annually. So he had a part to play in standardization. Okay. In 1882, again, he was still a master car builder in New York and New England. He was age 53, and his son Elias E. Jr., who was 25. Oh, I'm sorry. Move ahead here. June 1885 now, Boston Globe reports that Pratt, now 56, has built a 60-foot, quote, palace on wheels, a magnificent new dining car that surpasses anything ever built in this line. The diner had a 41-foot dining room with 10 tables per side, movable chairs rather than stationary ones, basket racks and lamps made expressly for the car were installed above the large double French plate glass windows. The interior was finished in mahogany with embossed leather panels. The car exterior was sheathed in seasoned whitewood, and that was painted red, as all New York and New England cars were. The dining car was to be attached to the New York and New England's 3 o'clock limited express to New York. Now, this was car number 97, and these photos you might recognize from Michael Sullivan's Shoreliner 45-1 from back in 23. They did an article on the introduction of dining car service on the New Haven Railroad. Not taking a shot at Michael if he's in here. Not taking a shot at him, but it's something, one of the reasons why I decided to do this presentation, and I'll eventually turn this into a Shoreliner article, is Pratt had a significant contribution to several railroads in the railroading industry over the course of his career, but I've yet to see his name anywhere. So it's just interesting to me. If you look at any one of these individual things, it's a data point, specific to that stovepipe of the industry, but you don't see Pratt pop up all the way across. So that same month, another report noted Pratt and his wife Melinda's passage on a steamer out of Boston down to Old Point Comfort in Virginia to attend the 19th annual convention of the Master Car Builders Association. It was noted a couple of dozen other New York, New England, and New Haven officers were also in attendance, and the large group making the trip together, all on the same steamer. All right, here we go. Now, Charles P. Clark was installed as the president of the New Haven in March of 1887. Pratt, 58, resigned from the New York and New England in April 1887. Unfortunately, Melinda, his wife, passed in June of 1887. It's not clear, and I can't tell from what I've seen so far, if Pratt left the New York and New England to care for Melinda because she was sick for some sort of period of time, or if it was the BH&E's downward spiral just made getting while the getting was good. There, back to those, speculative railroad shenanigans the BH&E was engrossed in, so it might have been a good time for him to get, especially with Melinda being sick. Clark was a prolific communicator with adoring former employees and some of his peers. He may have exchanged letters with Pratt during that period, although I haven't seen any. I have seen examples of other letters he's written with other people. He could have exchanged those as both a friend and a mentor, since we know that they were friends, and he brought him up to the New York and New England, or he would bring him up to the New York and New England. So with that, Pratt was appointed the inspector of stations and buildings of the New Haven Railroad effective June of 1887. My thought on this is good leaders surround themselves with smart and capable people. We know Clark was a great leader based on his long and very, very good career. So whatever Clark saw in Pratt 15 years before now led to Pratt getting called up to what I call the big league. As a former officer of the New York and New England and someone Clark knew and trusted from his formative railroading years back at the BH&E and then the New York and New England, ostensibly Pratt was going to assist Clark and the Consolidated Railroad in digesting the many railroads that they'd acquired so far. Pratt was apparently tasked with evaluating and coordinating replacement of old stations and depots, a myriad physical plant that the New Haven had acquired from its country cousins and former rivals and wherever else. You can imagine what needed to be done to kind of bring all those railroads into the fold. There is a report that Pratt assumed control of some unneeded shops in the New Haven, Connecticut area, purportedly from the New Haven and Northampton Railroad. He put together work crews, based them out of those shops, and they ended up pre-cutting lumber and framed building components. I've seen something that makes me think maybe they were ordering material into those shops, and what they did was they turned around what we could term now as construction specials. They loaded the pre-built, prefab sections of buildings on those trains. They had diners and sleeping cars and camp equipment and everything else. Labor and craftsmen, they loaded everything up and they sent them out to the work site, and they would stay out there for weeks and build whatever it was that needed to be built. Men lived and ate and worked in those special construction cars. One account from the 1940 notes that it was likely the first big ready-cut building project in New England. A photo postcard surfaced on the forum. That's the lower right picture there. Sometime, I think it was earlier this year. It's from Loris J. Bass, and Paul Cutler III posted it. It was dated in 1909, and the photo from the left is from Cape Cod Canal, which was dated 1911. So obviously these are well beyond the period that I'm talking about, but I'm wondering if this wasn't part of, these weren't Pratt's construction specials. There's another photo that I couldn't find. I've seen it before, but I couldn't find it, of the Cape Cod switching tower and some other buildings being built around that time, and there's what you would term a construction special sitting there. So more for me to run down. In June of 1888, Pratt, now 59, married Sarah V. Hatch Pratt, who happened to be his brother's widow. Thought that was an interesting tidbit. In August 22nd, 1893, Pratt, now 64, was granted his third patent for a freight car. This inauspicious title turned out to be his most visible and famous design, the folding side coal car. It's pretty simple. It's vertical iron supports on the inside of the car, and a hinge bar that runs down both sides of the car. And that hinge bar allows the top half to either be folded down or the bottom half to be folded up. And each of those panels are independent of each other. So you can fold down one, two, all of them. You can fold two down or you can fold one up. It's lots of different variables. There's provided for a latch at the top there to lock those doors in place. This car is not the original car. This car has a second patent that we'll discuss in a minute, but this is one of the best photos. This is the best photo of the cars in general. Couple of spotting details, across the top there. Difficult to tell from this photo, but there are some latches. If you look at the lower right two photos, you get a side profile of those latches and how when that door is folded up, they grab the top of it and hold it. Note that there's hopper openings. Ignore those. Those are a later patent that weren't in the original set of cars. On the left-hand middle side there, you see what looks like a truss rod on the end of the car. We'll talk about here in a second. And then on the bottom, these were Fox trucks, MCB couplers, and they had 6 truss rods, not 4. 6, I don't see a whole lot of that of, so that was interesting to me. Remember what I said too, Pratt and the Car Builders Association, deep into trying to figure out standardization, lots of industry back and forth over standardizing coal car designs, sizes, weights. The best they could ever do is come up with about a 60,000 pound capacity standard. After that, that's the only standard. They came in every shape and size. There is a June 1896 edition of Locomotive Engineering that's got a really good 2-page comprehensive section about the Pratt folding side coal car. It talks through dimensions, and he refers to this car as the New York, New Haven, and Hartford 60,000 pound coal car. He also refers to it as a standard 30-foot coal car of the 60,000 pound capacity. In there, it's one photo of car 1522, and it has a photo of panels folded up and down. So here's some of the things that are out there in literature. On the left-hand side is from the Car Builder's Dictionary. Car Builder's Dictionary carried this car in it for a number of years. It started out with a drawing in, I think it was 1903, the first edition that had a drawing in it. Later editions, 06, 09 had the drawing and a photo. At one point, they've included a definition, and that was the Pratt dump car, a side dump car for carrying coal. Side planks are hinged on a shaft running the length of the car and so arranged that the lower plank may be raised and the upper swung down, opening the whole side of the car. By 1912, in the Car Builder's Dictionary of 1912, all references to the Pratt car were gone. The center two drawings are from that Locomotive Engineering article from 1896. The two drawings are different. The dimensions are different. The car on the right is a 30-foot car. The car on the left was a 34-foot car. On the right there, Freight Cars with Truss Rod Ends, a Failed Experiment in Frugality by Ray Breyer. I happened across his paper where he speaks to truss rod ended cars, and he includes the New Haven Pratt design car in there. I think he missed it. That's not a truss rod on the end. It is actually simply a pivot point for the bar that's a hinge. You needed something to stabilize it longitudinally. You needed something, you have to anchor your hinge on both ends, and that's what that's there for. It's not an actual truss rod for, what we would think of as a truss rod is support and load bearing. There's a teeny little blue drawing in the lower left. I only put it there to remind me to mention that I don't know if it was Earl Tucson or Ken Ackerboom's website. It was one of the two that I found a drawing of a B&M Pratt car. And that's the only other good drawing that I've ever found of these. Slide 21, quick little montage here of where some of these cars have been, under a B&M gantry for coal. It's a really dark photo, and I couldn't do much to fix it, but you can tell the car sides are bowing out. Common problem of, gondolas that were being used for heavy loads. The top center there's one of those cars is B&M, and one of those cars is a New Haven, right there, a New Haven B&M. This is actually a sunken tugboat. This is from the Joe Taylor collection that Richard Fleischer sent me. There's a New Haven car here. This is actually from the Leroy Roberts collection that you see there with the two sides folded down. Leroy Roberts collection from the special collections. Richard also sent me this one, and he said that this was a Belitsky find. Over in the Cape Cod Canal, you can see one over here on the bridge, and you can see men inside of it doing something, unloading. Again, Joe Taylor color postcard down on the pier at Canal Dock. That's what you get with Pratt photos. That's why I said the one a minute ago from Yukon is about the best you're ever going to see. They were usually, at this date when these things were in existence, people didn't have cameras, and if they did have cameras, they took 3/4 shots of locomotives, not those. Here's a few more. This is from the internet. I cannot find what location or who owns it or anything about it. Based on this, it tells me it could be one of the, I'm gonna go blank, the, like the Connecticut valuation photos. I think that might be a Rogers car, but there are two New Haven Pratt cars right there. Down here from my collection, it's I don't know who the photographer was, but it's three Pratt cars lined up. This photo is actually also in the New Haven Power, but came from Mike, and it is in it's an NHRHTA photo, but at least I've got some car numbers here. A lot of these photos, I don't even have car numbers, so it's hard for me to come up with any sort of a number theory. And then my collection, long strings of these cars, only a couple car numbers. But I mean, 1912, look at that. Several dozen cars there. A few more. It's a pretty good photo on the upper right there, using the bucket loader. On the left, New Bedford, not bad photos. And then you get down into the lower left here, coke maybe, or sand. Thank you. Last couple. Made it all the way to Denholm, Pennsylvania. I've verified this location based on that coal structure, and I've gone around and looked. So they definitely made it to Pennsylvania. So there's a New Haven coal car that made it all the way to Pennsylvania. Here's some on the back side of these Jennies. So these drawings are from an invention. Now remember I said Pratt went to the New Haven as inspector of buildings and bridges, right? In 1896, the New Haven placed a new light passenger coach into service between New York and Boston. This car was designed by Pratt, and the master car builder Appleyard for the New Haven built it. Pratt's design basically halved many of the structural components to reduce weight. For example, the posts were decreased from 1 3/4 down to 7/8 inch. The total weight savings, but the car came in at 51,750 pounds, or a savings of 7,750 pounds, or about 13%, over the most comparable standard coach on the New Haven at the time, and some of those coaches were running at above 65,000 pounds. So it was a decent savings in weight. An 8-car train could be operated at the same expense of a standard heavyweight 7-car train, or alternatively, a train of the same capacity could be run at a net cost savings. Either case, the revenue could be increased. By January of 1898, this light coach had run 59,000 and some odd miles in satisfactory service. So, on July 2nd, 1898, Clark named Pratt, who is now 69, superintendent of buildings, and Pratt Jr., his son, was named assistant superintendent of buildings. That, in spite of a late 1893 order from the New Haven, issued by Clark, of all people, to the effect that heads of departments should not retain their relatives in the employment of the company. This brings us to Pratt's third patent. It is for those sliding doors that we talked about. Both the sliding doors and the folding sides could be applied to any car construction. So any flat car you could modify. And the sliding doors are operated individually. So 4 sliding doors in the car on the right, that means 4 rack and pinion assemblies that you turn by that bar there. And that's it. You put a bar in there and you twist it, and you move the bar to the next hole, and you twist it down some more, and that's how you open it. Jump ahead here real quick. In 1899, the Morning Journal provided a verbal tour of the New Haven's new general office spaces. Interesting to me that Pratt and Pratt Jr. both had their own offices, and they were given 6 assistants each for their 2 offices. Also, a report from March of 1900, the Morning Journal Courier reported the Adams Express Company gifted $2,000, which was a princely sum of $75,000 in 2024 dollars to the Railroad YMCA to be used for books at the library. The railroad was going to furnish its own cases at railroad cost. Pratt Jr. presented the plans for this library, and the committee was to select the books. Yeah, we're at time. I'm going to bring it home. And there we have it. Pratt retired to Norwood. He moved into a house at 24 Linden Street, barely 50 yards from the Norwood Central train station, the new one. That's the bottom red arrow that you see there. He spent his years with the Grand Army of the Republic post that he was a founding member of, doing parades and whatnot around town. Helped draft a book to sell, the town of Norwood to other companies to bring them in. And he passed away in 1913. The grave marker there, it's fairly sizable, so I don't have details, but he was a man of means when he passed. And Norwood Free Press ran a short story about him in 1947. A distant relative found his dusty old railroad lantern in a barn that they were about to clean out and sell, and the paper went down and talked to the relative and kind of got pieces of a story. And so they wrote a quickie little bio on him, and I believe that's all we got.